And developments over the last week. Well, it's been a pretty good week, really. SA had 6 new cases, and in Australia, 141 new cases. So that's 20 a day across Australia. And that brings us to just short of 6,700 cases. And today I thought I'd put up a slightly different graphic for us to look at how many people are still unwell versus how many people have recovered. And you can probably see on this picture that the area in black are the people who are still unwell or are currently unwell. And there's a thin little area of people who have died each day from this disease. And the orangey colour is the people who have recovered. So you can see that this is a different graphic to show that we are actually decreasing the curve or flattening the curve, which is what we've been discussing for the last several weeks. And a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that we were going to be talking about some R value. Sorry, I'm just waiting for a technical difficulty of the slides to change. So, unfortunately for you today, we're going to go through a little bit of some epidemiology. So, I've got a couple of questions for you to think about. Are we on the road to recovery? And is this virus under control? And I guess to understand that, we've got to actually look at what we've got. And you've probably heard me talk about RO, or the basic reproduction number, which for coronavirus is about somewhere between 2.5. As was researched what happened in Wuhan in China, and that was 2.68 was the basic reproduction number there before they put in place the public health measures. And what we need to be looking at is R effective, which the other way to look at it is the adjusted growth factor. So what are we achieving with our public health measures at the moment? And so I've got some pictures here which are horribly complicated looking. What is Australia's R effective, or what's Australia's current growth factor? And these charts go through to early April, and the dotted line that you can see there is an R of 1, which means for every person who has this illness, they give it on average to one other person. And so as we look along here, we can see that for most of March, from sort of mid-March onwards, each state in Australia has been under 1, so that's why you can see we're flattening that curve. But you can see in late March there, Tasmania jumped back above with a little cluster of infections. And the problem we have with this illness is if one person catches it and doesn't realise they're sick, and they're in close contact with a group of other people, if that one person gives it to 30 people, then you've immediately lost control in that area. And that's what we're calling a cluster, where we get a cluster of people infected in a particular region. And if that happens in 10 places in Australia, then we're in trouble again. And that's why the public health people aren't talking about immediately being able to stop all the things we're doing. So our R effective at the moment, or our growth factor at the moment, is excellent, but to keep it that way, we have to keep doing the right thing. And I guess yesterday was Anzac Day. And so I thought it would be good for us to have a look at, if we go back to what the Anzacs did, what were they asked to do? Well, they were asked to leave their families behind. They were asked to go off and fight a war against a strong enemy. And you might remember early in the Second World War, the British thought that they'd be home by Christmas. And for us at the moment, we might be thinking, oh, well, by the end of the year, everything will be back to 100% perfect, or by the middle of the year, everything will be back to 100% perfect. And there's some different things going through our heads, or maybe we're hoping that by next week, or by tomorrow when our kids can go back to school apparently, that everything's back to perfect. And we know in the Second World War, they weren't home by Christmas. Well, they were home by a Christmas, but it wasn't the one they were aiming for. And the third thing, if we think about what the people in the war were asked to do, they're asked to risk their lives and their health and to go off and fight for their friends and their country. And that's not something we're being asked to do either. If we can actually look at what we are being asked to do, we're being asked to keep our families close. We're being asked to stay home so that we don't spread or catch it. And we're being asked to practice good hygiene to protect our country. And so these are very different things to the things that we've commemorated yesterday, that the people who have gone off to war for us, for our people, for our country, for our way of life, they've done things that are a lot harder than what we're currently being asked to do. And for Darren's tip for this week is really talking about let's show our love. I mean, it's been said that there's no greater love than to lay down your life for your friends and that's something we remember from the armed forces. Well, at the moment, we're being asked to show our love for people by staying home, by washing our hands, for being careful to cough into our elbows, to make sure if we're unwell we don't go anywhere. And in Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 2, it says, "And walk in love, as Christ also has loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma." So the other thing we need to make sure we're doing is showing love to ourselves and looking after ourselves in this time, showing love to our families, and making sure that we're showing love to our relationship with God through this time as well. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Dr. Darren. It's great to see good results happening there. We understand, of course,